step into their power, step into the ability to thrive and figure out who they are so that they can step into their zone of genius.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Conversation Piece, your place to discover the untold stories right here in Indianapolis of the community and all of its wonderful people. My name is Patrick Armstrong. I am your host, and I am so excited to be back for another installment here in 2025, the year of community. Normally I can see when this episode is releasing and what day this is, but I know it's sometime in May, and so I am excited to be here for AAPI History, Heritage, whatever you want to call it month, celebrating all the wonderful things about our great diaspora here in Indianapolis. We have a lot of really cool stuff that's been happening, so make sure you check that out. Go to conversationpeacepod.com to get caught up on all of the things that you might have missed, which might be this very conversation, and I am very excited to be sharing it with you today. My guest today is an award-winning leadership and lifestyle coach, speaker, trainer, author, and entrepreneur whose work focuses on developing and empowering emotional intelligence. She has worked with numerous organizations like Eli Lilly and Big Brother Big Sister to help them develop and implement programs that empower them to fortify their management teams, foster genuine connections with their team members, and cultivate a company culture that authentically reflects their values. We've already had some really great conversations off mic, so I am super excited to be able to get this conversation on mic today. So without further ado, it is my great joy and privilege to welcome my friend Sonal Sheth Zawarhi to the show.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
100%. I appreciate you making time to sit down and have this conversation officially in front of the cameras on the mics. All right, so we are going to start here. You grew up in Brooklyn after your family immigrated to the States. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that experience of culture shock that you might have had at such a young age. Was it even registered as a culture shock to shift from one country to another, or was it, I'm here now, I'm just going to lean into it?
That's a gigantic question because I was 11, right?
Right.
So being, my daughter's in middle school now, so I think when I look back, I think about what it's like, the mindset of a middle school kid, right? So I would answer it looking back right now versus understanding what I went through then. But at that moment, it was shock. I remember waking up and seeing a cornfield and seeing this space that I thought was going to be a gas station stop. And it turned out, no, it's going to be where we're going to live. And I was like, huh? And so all of that in that moment, I really was blessed to have, my mom was there on this trip. My dad stayed behind with my other two siblings. They were going to come later. And I'm really blessed to have a mom who has a really great open mindset, because every time I wanted to step into, I can't do this, this is crazy, she immediately, and now when I look back at it, she just had this way of repositioning it and saying, this is what we need to do. So step up and step in. Yeah. And if I look back and think of it, that is probably what drove me and kept me grounded. Sure. But it was hard. It was hard. Definitely. It was hard to go to school. It was hard for people to say things to me. It was hard. Yeah. Did
that experience shift once the rest of your family came over and joined you? I feel like it was probably a little bit different to have that experience with your mom. Was it just you and your mom at that time?
No, it was my mom there. So I'm the youngest of four. Okay. And my sibling, my sister, who's 2 years older than me, she was with me. Okay. So she would have been going into the 8th grade. My brother and sister, who were 9th grade and 11th grade in Brooklyn, they were behind with my dad to figure out. I didn't know they were figuring things out because I didn't know this was happening. And they didn't know it was happening. So only my parents knew this. Okay. And it came up later that, hey, we have to figure out how to sell the home we had in Brooklyn. So we're going to send mom and the other two youngest. So I think it impacted us. But it was even different when my siblings joined us because they're older. And when you have to transition into a community that is predominantly one culture, when you're older, it's more of a shock. My sister and my brother really adapted to Brooklyn living, right? You're in high school, so you're a totally different person. I think it was I'm going to speculate the easiest for me to adapt because I was the youngest.
Sure.
And I wasn't fully settled into who's Sonal,
Right.
And that was the opportunity. I think I had the biggest growth and opportunity being only in the 6th grade to pay attention to my surroundings and figure things out.
Yeah. What were you picking? Do you remember what you were picking up from your siblings at that time? Because I feel like at 11, you're definitely a sponge because it is like that. Are you middle school yet at 11?
I was going to be in the 6th grade.
And going into middle school, I feel like that is a time where, you're really trying to figure your identity out.
Yes.
Which doesn't make any sense because it's like you're so young still. Like you're just hitting double digits in age. You got a lot of time to figure that out generally. And like I grew up as the oldest child, so like I guess I was setting the example. But I don't know the experience of having the example set. So what do you remember kind of what you were picking up from them?
My whole life has been my siblings being who I wanted to shadow.
Sure.
Like they are just amazing to me. And my sister was 16 and I was 11, and we just had our birthdays in May and we moved there in June.
Okay.
So I just turned 11 and my sister just turned 16. Each one of us had to take a bus and then a subway to get to our respective schools.
Yeah.
Right? So with that being said, when my sister came in, she was like, what? I remember her, and then she's watching this. I respect what she went through, but I remember her being more angry, more upset, definitely more rebellious than myself. I was the goody-goody.
Sure.
They all look at me and saying, you really were a goody-goody. And I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, I really was. And I think a lot of that was because they modeled this way. My brother was incredibly intelligent. He was valedictorian of Stuyvesant and all of Brooklyn. And I was like, oh, these are people I have to follow.
Sure.
And so it just felt like a lot. Yeah. And my sister, who's a little bit older than me, we spend more time together. And she was so creative and so amazing that I don't remember wanting to be anyone but them.
Yeah.
And so in that time of life in the 70s and early 80s, I don't know if this makes sense. As 4 siblings, my parents were like, what are you talking about, friends? Your friends are your siblings.
Sure.
Can I go out, Mom? What do you mean go out? You hang out at home. And it was like, okay, right? That's all I knew.
Yeah.
And so they were my role models.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that because, I'm always interested in this idea of what it would be like to grow up in a family where siblinghood had that closeness.
Yes.
I liked also what you said about how your mom would support you when like things were getting hard and step up and affirm you and be like, yes, you can do this. I read that your parents not only came over here and worked a lot of jobs, but then they became entrepreneurs themselves. So thinking about how your siblings were your role models, what was it like watching your parents navigate that journey, especially finding yourself as an entrepreneur now, but not knowing then that that's what you were going to do, but be able to see the people in your family, the 2 people directly responsible for your care, lean into something that even in the 70s and 80s, especially for an immigrant, I think was happening a lot, but was definitely difficult.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's interesting you asked that because as I look back, as I'm writing the books that I want to write, one of them was going to be called Through You, True You. So True You is the name of my business. I created that in 1990s when I first started entrepreneurship. And it was because Through You for me was through my parents. And like even talking about them chokes me up because soulfully, they are remarkable. They have fallen, they have failed so much, but to watch them get back up and see the way they were resilient was incredible. And I'm gonna be honest, my dad is an amazing human, but my mom, she was the matriarch of the family.
Yeah.
And she was the one that said to my dad in India, no, we're going to America. She's the one that said, okay, so this business failed. What's next? She's the one that said, okay, I'm pure vegetarian. Let me flip burgers at Burger King. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So I didn't speak the language so thoroughly, but my parents speak Gujarati, which is where we're from. And so they always spoke Gujarati at home. So their English was very broken.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop them. I watched my mom, even with her broken English, stand at this little newspaper stand, build relationships with the customers that came in. I mean, really cool. And even not be afraid. I was afraid.
Sure.
My dad would get afraid sometimes, but he worked at the hospital. So watching my mom persevere and push through, I remember saying, I'm never going to own my own business. Like, I immediately didn't want that, because the first business was them leaving at 4 a.m. to go to the corner street, pick up the newspaper bundle, set it up on this little newspaper stand with cigarettes and magazines and all things, and then them not coming home till midnight. And then after school, we would go and take the bus to the store and play jump rope outside or do whatever until they had to close.
Yeah.
That was life at the time. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to do this.
Sure.
But it transitioned. And as it continued to transition and we moved to the Midwest, it was a different kind of business.
Sure.
And I watched them in that business. Now, I want to make it clear that my siblings and I, what's really cool and hard is we're only 5 years apart. So the oldest, my sister, she is 5 years older than me, and the ones in between are, so that's really close in age.
Yeah.
So I think that really allowed us to be close because when things would come up or things would happen, we were latchkey kids.
Yeah.
Right? If people are not familiar with what that is, that was allowed in the 70s and 80s. My parents had to leave us at home, cook food, leave it on the stove. We would tend for ourselves and put ourselves to bed.
This is the era of notes on the fridge or on the counter, like, hey, we're at work. See you later.
And mom she still knew things. It was really scary. I mean, no, I'm serious. This is coming up for me, so I'm sorry. I got to say this because it's really scary how mom's intuition is so true. She would come home at 1 or 2 in the morning, and she made sure we drank milk. There was this thing in our home about, you must drink milk. My finger hurts. Drink milk, right? And I think in her brain, it was always like, milk is going to make us the strong humans we're supposed to be. Well, we didn't like milk. And so I remember thinking, my mom won't know. So one time, very carefully, we poured the milk down the holes of the drain and we poured water on it. This was at like 6 p.m. 2 a.m. She comes in, she wakes us up out of our bed. She goes, I know you poured the milk down the drain. We're like, what? So, from the very beginning, my mom and my dad both, they just have this intuitive sense of knowingness. And I know now as an adult, that's where I got it from.
For sure.
And my siblings were great. And I don't like buts. And my mom and dad, they set the pace and they set the stage. And they were knocked down so many times. If they didn't get knocked down as much as they did and I experienced how they got back up, I don't think I could be doing what I'm doing today.
For sure. Well, one, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Two, I think that you talk about like it was almost through you, not true you, but that's like that's why, is because those lived experiences that they had, you got to be a front row spectator too. And how could you not be influenced by something like that?
Yeah.
And how could that not become a potential pivotal driving factor behind the work that you want to do? Yeah. Even though at 11, you might not realize, oh, this is influencing me this way. You're just like, man, mom and dad are gone a lot, or like are at work a lot.
Yeah.
And then like you said, I didn't want to own my own business back then. It's because an entrepreneur who owns his own business looks like standing on the side of the street, for 12 hours a day to sell newspapers. I want to stick on this line of intuition because you talked about like your mom was the decision maker. Like decisions were being made, but when it was like, oh, this is a thing that happened, what's going to happen next? And like, here we go. Well, we need a catalyst. I'll be the catalyst for at least spurring the thought about it. What did she have one of those, like that moment of intuition when it came to transitioning to the Midwest?
It makes me always so happy, emotional.
Yeah.
Because I think about how did they know what they knew? Like it blows my mind.
Right.
And if I bring it up to my mom today, she's 85, she'd be like, I don't understand, Sonia. Right. And I would be like, Mom, do you realize what you did? You and Dad had a conversation without us, which is fine. It is fine now that I look back. It wasn't then. We're like, why wouldn't you ask us, right?
Sure.
But it was back then, and they had a vision. And the fact that she had such a clear vision, and I believe when she shared with us her why, their vision was, this is a college town.
Yeah.
We are tired and scared that if we don't move, we don't know what it's going to take for you to make it home on the bus, or what's going to happen to our child. Like it was scary for them.
Yeah.
So that was the motivation. And when they found through different resources another business that they could do in a town with a college or university that was reputable, one thing to note, and if you know any Indians from India, academics or Asia, academics is the thing. That is the driving force, right? That gets you out of everything.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, you must be doctor, engineer, lawyer. Well, how am I going to have my kids do that if? And I could tell that that's the way their wheels were turning. I don't think they really understood or knew. They just knew it needed to be different.
Sure.
And so she made those decisions with extended family members, found this location, didn't tell us, and said, I'm going to trust. One thing I will say about my parents is they're very intuitive and trusting and spiritual. We grew up very spiritual. And what I mean by that is we went to Catholic preschool. We had friends that we went to the mosque. We went to church. We went to temple. My parents were the first to buy a mini golden temple and put it in our home in the 80s in all of the Midwest. My mom always taught us it's from within.
Yeah.
And that's the voice you listen to. And that's how I think I continued to channel that. And my siblings, because we are all deeply intuitive, and that's how we operate our lives.
Yeah. Remind us where in the Midwest that y'all moved to, if you don't mind. You haven't said, and I'm realizing that maybe you didn't want to say. But...
No, I have no problem. I am proud now to look back. It was Oxford, Ohio, where the great Miami University is. And we lived on Route 27 North. It was a highway, and it was across the street from a cornfield. And and a big factory called Square D, and we didn't have a lot of neighbors. So that was I'm a very visual person. If you can visualize that as kids coming from a Brooklyn street, an apartment on the fourth floor, or a house, like a brownstone kind of house, to a space like that, that's what was like. And can't believe I'm announcing this on like live, but I was a scaredy cat. Like I was afraid of the dark, and it wasn't afraid of the city.
Sure.
It was afraid of, I looked across the street and there were spotlights and there were cornfields. And all I remember is all the scary movies that my older siblings used to watch. And because you only have a 1-bedroom apartment and there's nowhere that I can go I would close my ears and go, blah, 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 and they would be watching scary movies. I remember coming to that space, opening my eyes, going, oh my God, that's the darkness that was in all these scary movies like Children of the Corn. And it freaked me out. So it took me a while, but it was Oxford, Ohio. It turns out to be the best thing, the best decision they ever made, the biggest blessing, and I'm superiorly grateful for it. And if it comes up later, my husband just asked my parents not too long ago, like, what do you think Sonal would be like if you stayed in Brooklyn? And to hear all the different answers, I was like, I wonder who I would have been if I stayed in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Well, we might have to come back to that in a little bit. But I appreciate you sharing that. I just wanted to make sure. I knew it was in Ohio, but I could not remember exactly where. So I wanted to make sure we were placing us in the right spot.
Yes.
So you mentioned like the doctor, engineer, lawyer, like that is like a stereotype in the Asian community, because when folks were immigrating here, people had to become entrepreneurs, had to find ways to generate revenue, and they scrapped and scraped and really, really, I feel like, struggled. I grew up in a white household, so I don't really know what that was like. And I grew up feeling like, oh, you can go do whatever you want. I was told that, I had that dream. And still somehow thought that the American dream was just go back and live in Rensselaer and just be in that small town. Yeah, neither here nor there. I bring that up because like what I've learned over the last 5 years is I've like become or found myself in community with other Asian folks and part of the diaspora now, is that this is happening because that is like, you want to be, you're pushing doctor, engineer, lawyer because it's like, this is what is going to make you not have to stand on the corner of the street and sell newspapers. And unfortunately, to the detriment of a generation of people, to some sort of detriment, like that's instilled this mindset like that's the only way that you can be Asian in this country. And then that feeds into stuff like the model minority myth and things like that, is this idea that we are only going to work in these high position places, and that's the only places that we can really get to that equate success. And so it creates rifts in families and between generations. However, those things weren't done out of like, I don't like my kids. Like, it's done out of like, this is not only survival, but love.
Purpose.
Yeah. And like, this is like, we don't want you to have to stand here and do the same things that we did. It's so interesting to me to think about that, because I know so many people in the Asian diaspora community that do non-traditional things, wildly non-traditional stuff. And it's amazing because a lot of folks had that similar like upbringing and mindset. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is what we have to be, because this is what gets us the privilege of being able to, again, be successful or whatever, been positioned by the powers and systems that be. And you, as someone who had 3 other role models, and your siblings who may or may not have been pursuing other things in the world in terms of career, as well as having, again, entrepreneurial parents, ended up in education. A lot of that might have been because you were in a college town, but also it's like education is like 11th on the list because historically educators are not paid very well. So I was wondering, like, on your website you talk about passion for knowledge. I was wondering, like, where that passion for knowledge came from, but also, like, how did that translate into I want to be an educator and maybe not do doctor, lawyer, engineer?
It wasn't that simple. I wish it was. I so wish it was. So I think it helped to be in a college town. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I'm going to come back to that, because it was hard to be in a college town and go to school with college professors' kids.
Sure. Right?
When we got there, we were not, I don't like using classifications of money, to define people, but we were low middle class, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if we were that, right? We weren't where those professors' kids were. Sure. And I knew that. I understood that. I had to live through that because it was really different. Now, I'm going to say my parents tried. We lived in Oxford, which was half an hour away from Connersville, Indiana, Richmond, Indiana, an hour from Dayton, Cincinnati. And I say that because there were hardly any Indian families around us. Sure. But my mom said she did that intentionally. I didn't realize that. She's like, I don't want you growing up around people who are going to persuade you to be something. I want you to figure out who you are. And also, we did interact with those Indian families, but we would drive. So we were far away enough to be away from the gossipy and you have to do this and you have to do that. And I didn't realize at the time how open-minded my mom was compared to other Indian families.
Well, it's interesting to think about removal from community in that way in order to find yourself and like craft your own identity. Because I was removed from that unintentionally or intentionally. Yes. And like I did the opposite and like struggled with that for a long time. So I think that's really interesting.
Well, we did struggle, but we had each other as siblings.
Sure, but you were still like, she was doing the work to intentionally put you back in those spaces.
And at the time I didn't understand. There was a lot of pushback, right? Probably less from me, more from my older siblings. Okay. And I watched and I saw that. And now I look back and I think how much I became an observer. Yeah. And so that leads into being a growth mindset. Sure. And a person who loves learning. Now, I will say in India, education is highly valued. Yeah. So my mom's brothers were professors. She comes from the educational space in India, her father and stuff. So I think it wasn't something we didn't think about, but in the States, it wasn't like, oh, be an educator because you'll be well respected.
Yeah, right. It's unless not held in the same light as it is
unless you're a professor. Yeah. Right. And so in their brain, they were like, oh, be professor, right? Well, I started watching my brother, who always succeeded as well, and knew that, oh, if I did this, this is where I could land my feet. Yeah. Well, my older sister, sorry, Swati, did have to have an arranged marriage at 21. I was 16. My brother, being a year and a half younger than her, he was pre-med in college, and he followed through and became a doctor. My other sister was pre-med because we're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And her senior year, she realized that she knew art was her thing. Mm. So she applied for her to get her master's in New York City at Oh, it just left my brain. Sorry, Manisha. Master's in Fine Arts she got, and I'll come back to what that was called. And she told my parents last minute, I think I'm going to go get my master's in New York State. I'm sorry, what? In art. So she left to go do that. That left me, the last one, pre-med, zoology, going, I don't want to be a doctor. What do I do?
So we're trending in the direction.
Yes. And I now had one sibling who had to get married, one sibling who went to become a doctor, and then one sibling who had the courage, because it usually is my older sister and my middle sister who are the ones that are like, this is what I want to do.
Sure.
And it was more me and my brother that were the goody goodies, the rule followers. And so I remember then my mom was like, oh, when you graduate, you'll get an arranged marriage. I'm like, what? And I remember at that moment thinking, I don't want that.
Yeah.
How do I get out of this? Ooh, academics. Academics will get me out of that path. And so I went and sourced and found and did all this volunteer at Miami with inner city school programs. I mean, I think I explored.
Yeah.
And I decided at last minute my senior year to double in education. I was like, wait, I could maybe potentially teach science because I have all the biology already.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, but you got to take 24 credit hours. And I'm like, okay. And I did. And I doubled in education my senior year, told my parents this is what I want to do. Behind the scenes, I applied for my master's at Ohio State. And I interviewed with a school in Columbus, Ohio that said, hey, if you teach high school biology for us, we will pay for your master's degree. And I just got the acceptance letter to get my master's. So I went home and introduced that as an idea to my parents. And they're like, okay, that got me out of having to have a marriage. It was that avenue that took me to education. And it was my reputation of the volunteer work that I had done that I just did because I loved it. I didn't realize it was going to become a career path.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
100%.
So watching my mom be hungry for knowledge all the time, my brother's always hungry for knowledge, my siblings were just wired that way.
Yeah.
It was like, why wouldn't I try this?
Right.
Now when I look back, I'm like, I wonder.
Yeah.
But that's what I chose to do.
Well, it became the avenue to be like, I don't want to marry whoever might land in this spot. How far along down in that process did you think they got before you got to I got a plan here that I think might work for every party involved?
That actually might have to be a whole nother interview for you.
Okay.
I had gone through the arranged setup at different conferences. I've had to go through it.
At conferences? Like you were just at a conference for something different, and then you're like, we're going to do, there's marriage stuff happening over here, and conference room B.
You know how in the States, in America right now, we have all these shows that are like, all these reality shows about getting married. I don't watch the reality shows, but there's a lot of them now, right? Well, back in the 80s and 90s, people were like, you're doing what? And I'm like, it is no different than what you're doing in here, like The Bachelorette and these things, right? But yeah, it was, that was part of the process. And I'm going to tell you, my siblings and I, we were the goody goodies in the Indian community. All the other Indian kids in our community thought we were like lame.
Oh, okay.
They were the rebels. They were the ones that partied. We didn't do that. And I think my mom was smart in keeping us an hour away.
Sure.
Because we weren't influenced by that. I actually didn't have any Indian friends until I got in college and went, there's Indians around? Because you also had kids of our generation that were rebelling against what their parents were doing. The same thing my parents were doing.
Sure.
But we didn't for some reason in that capacity. I can never understand why. But we didn't. And because of that, I know that it drove me to be really respectful and understanding from the very beginning. Empathy is my superpower.
Yeah.
And now that I look back, I've had empathy since I was a kid. Well, if mom and dad had to go through this, I can't imagine how hard it must have been for them.
Sure.
So why wouldn't I be the best version of me for them because of everything they went through? My mindset was like that since I was in high school.
Yeah.
And that's not common when you're a teenager, right? You want what you want.
Well, you don't develop, I think, your empathy. Like you can have empathy, I think. I don't think as kids you really understand what that means. You know, I think you can like learn about the concept, but I think the feeling of it, it's almost like it's instinct. It's more instinct, I think, than and less like calculated about like, oh, I'm strategic with this. Definitely
intuitive, and it is what drove me to be the person I am today.
Yeah.
Because I always felt for them. Everyone who said, why did you go through those arranged marriage situations and scenarios? And in my heart of hearts, I knew I was going to say no to the guy.
Sure.
But I said, why would I not satisfy my parents? They are the ones that came here to do this. And people are like, okay. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I am pretty much of a good kid here. Wow. Oh. But I always felt more for them.
Yeah.
So I went through with the process and at the end said, no,
Sure.
not interested. And they'd be like, why are you not interested? I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, I at least met them halfway.
Yeah.
And that was my intention.
And then you meeting them halfway, they were willing to then meet you halfway.
Correct.
If it got to a no, it didn't feel like they pressed upon you to be like,
Absolutely.
can we turn this no into a yes? It was really like, okay, we respect your decision.
My dad, at times, it wasn't. My mom was always open to the point where other Indian families would send their kids to my mom because they would want to disown them because they were going to marry this person or go into this. And my mom would always say, don't do that. It's about your parenting. And she would bring those kids in. We once brought in a kid from Brooklyn and took care of him for 3 years for that reason. So my mom has always had that really open mindset, which is so amazing to me.
Well, that's like where that wellspring of empathy that you draw on, like originates from, for you at least.
Absolutely.
Is just like your mom clearly willing to, like you said, not only be open-minded, but open-hearted in a way that a lot of people might not always be. And especially when you're early immigrant communities in like the 70s and 80s that were like, we are just trying to survive here. And sometimes it is community, but sometimes it's not. And I think the interesting thing about being intentional about placing you outside of community, I think is a really interesting choice. And definitely rooted in what I think that you work in now, which is like the emotional intelligence aspect piece of it. So we're establishing that font starts with your mom. Do you also trace like your time working with students to helping develop like the idea that emotional intelligence specifically is what I want to be working in? Because you're working in like STEM and science, which is not necessarily emotional intelligence on its face. However, like the interactions and relationships that you build as a teacher and with students, I think you are naturally going to start tapping into some of that.
Yeah, I think I did. And I was 21 going on 22 when I accepted the role to teach high school. I'm 5'2". I was very tiny, even tinier than now. And I had these tall junior and seniors in high school hovering over me. And I remember thinking, how am I going to be in these classrooms and they're going to take me seriously? Well, after a decade of being there, I ended up being the hardest teacher in the school. And people were like, don't mess with Miss Sheth, right? And the way that happened is if I look back now, I think about what my personality is versus what my ability was.
Yeah.
So let me identify what that means to me. I've always been capable of being book smart, right? I think if we all put our heart and soul into it. I always had to study 5 hours. Someone would study 1 hour because I didn't know how to study. I didn't grow up with parents who could answer questions because they didn't really speak English. So I had to teach myself. And they always say, when you teach, you learn.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I became a teacher and when I got into that space, I didn't realize how much I had to teach myself how to study and learn.
Sure.
And it was that journey of figuring that out that made me realize how much I was passionate about where I was. I honestly took it as a way out.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was my path. And that was what was genius. The science part, well, that's because I was supposed to.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I was capable.
Because it'll pay for your master's.
Right. And it was easy. Science and math came easier to me than never asked me about social studies, about American history. Like when I was in those classes, I was like, huh?
Yeah.
It just came easier. So with that being said, when I was teaching high school science, I think the first time it ever dawned upon me is a memory is coming up, if that's okay if I share.
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks before school started and I just got the job. And they told me I was going to teach biology. Okay, I was a pre-med zoology major. No worries. Well, when I get to the school, they're like, oh, by the way, we don't use textbooks. And I went, okay. And they're like, oh, and by the way, you're going to teach earth science. And I said, I'm sorry, what? I've never taken earth science.
Yeah.
Oh, well, your colleagues, they can help you with that. Well, there was a lot of other stories around that not working out for the longest time for many different reasons. And my colleagues were like, no, we're not going to help you. So I drove back to Miami University 2 hours away, met up with an earth science professor, borrowed all their textbooks, went back and pulled 3 all-nighters. And all they gave me was an outline of this is what you have to cover this year. And it was then, when I look back now, that I think about what makes me who I am today.
Yeah.
Because I had to figure it out. I
Sure.
had to lead from where I was. I could have said, no, I don't want to teach. Forget it. I can't do this. Or I was like, they don't want to help. They don't want to help. I've got to do this.
Yeah.
And so I crafted, created, did whatever felt like I could. I went in front of that classroom. And in the first day of school, I thought, they don't even know I'm a teacher because I was so young looking. And I sat in a chair. And the students were waiting. The bell rang and the students came in. They said, well, the teacher's not here. We heard if it's 5 minutes in, we could leave. And I said, yeah, what'd you hear about this? And I'm chiming in. This teacher, Miss Sheth. Oh, we heard she was this and she was hard and she was really me too. Oh, hold on. Let me write something on the board for her.
Yeah.
So I get up and I write, hi, I'm Miss Sheth. And they all turned around and went, what? I said, hi, everyone. I'm your teacher. And I remember that moment because it was so scary for me.
Sure.
But it was so, like, I had these kids standing up and going, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you think I mean? And all of a sudden, I think Brooklyn Sonal came out. I didn't even know what that meant. But the way I stood up for myself, and that led, and someone's like, at the end of that week, I remember someone's like, God, how do you know earth science so well? And in my head, I was like, you have no idea that I just crammed. And it was that taught me. And for the next 8 years, we didn't use books. I had to figure it out. And that's when I stepped into my ability to learn and understand that I do have emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And until someone told me later in life that's what it was called, it was a lifestyle for me.
Sure.
It was a way of being. It was a way of surviving.
Yeah.
It was a way of, okay, you don't want to help? I will use my resources. Look, if my mom and dad can come to the US and make what they have out of resources, guess what, human beings? We're in America. You have access to anything you want. Tap into it.
Yeah.
And so that's the mindset I chose. And in that next 8 years, I became Stephen Covey certified. I got my master's in the evenings. I drove back to the business for my parents on the weekends and took care of the business. And I did what it took to say, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And no one's going to keep me from this. And I knew in my mind that I wasn't going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't I take access and tap into my resources? I can get a master's degree. I can get tenured. I can get, all these accolades.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I? So that's the mindset I chose. And now when I look back, when we go through the pillars of emotional intelligence, that's what that's about.
Yeah.
So I truly operated in that space, not knowing that's what it was called. Yeah. If that makes sense.
100%. Well, it's like you, again, it's a survival thing. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about on social media now where we see you now. We see the person as they are now. We don't see everything, all the context that it took to get them to said photo, to the feed. And what you just shared right there is that context that people miss. So even in those moments back then when we're not using social media, like nobody that you're working with, none of your colleagues or anything who didn't give you the time of day in the first place also are not seeing all of this stuff. So when they ask you a question like, well, how do you know this subject so well? It's like, well, how much time do you have for me to sit here and tell you everything that led me to get to this point? Yeah. And so I really appreciate you sharing with us now, because I think it is something that, again, I don't think can be impressed upon enough as we move to shorter and shorter attention spans. Whenever we get back to the 6-second vines, I'll know that we have succumbed to the social media pressure, and in that we are irrevocably harmed forever with our attention spans. But I wanted to ask you really quickly, you talked about being a teacher made you realize like you love like learning, like you could be a good learner. What did you learn during those 8 years from your students that you are able to tap into? Yeah,
I love that question so much. I have this huge, massive poster that I have kept. When I had to leave teaching, all my students that they could gather from all the years came together and put their names on a star and put this poster. My nickname used to be Sunshine. And they put, "You are my sunshine," and they had it all written out. I was so surprised when they gave that to me. I left with like a cart full of gifts. And I looked at them, and I was the hardest teacher in the school, yet I did dance classes with them afterwards. I was the multicultural coordinator of the school district and put shows on every month.
Yeah.
Even when people didn't show up, I still put them on. The students were there. What I learned from them is how to show up. I am telling you, that is my favorite phrase, and everyone who knows me knows I use it all the time. So how are you showing up today? These kids taught me so much. I would show up in this classroom, and it sounds weird, but I was really vulnerable and authentic with them from the very get-go. I didn't know how to be anything else.
Sure.
And that was unique and different because teachers don't do that. And because of that, it really built a bond, and I kept listening to them. I brought on so many students to be my assistants and brought them in to be my mentees. I mentored quite a few. So in those 8 years, I still keep in touch with some of my students who are now parents of 4 kids. They live in Arizona. They live in here. To think that my students that I started with are now in their 40s really freaks me out a little bit. But they've reached out to me on social media to tell me how when they failed my class, that I wouldn't give up on them. And because of that, this one gentleman is now a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And he's like, I failed every class. I failed only your class, and you never gave up on me. I graduated finally, and I started my own business. And he reached out to me in his 30s to tell me that. I say that to you because I learned that from them.
Yeah.
I understood what it felt like. I didn't realize you called it empathy at the time. I knew what it felt like to be in their shoes. And I say that because I did teach at a wealthy school system. But the kids that I really bonded with, even money or no money, were the ones that would come in the classroom and they had no idea who they were. And it really touched my soul because I would sit there and take the time every day after school to say, I'm here for you. I'll teach you study skills. Let me help you become the best version of you. And because of that relationship, I think that's what made me stay as long as I did and do the work that I did do there. They did finally start a organization called CARDS, Kids Against Racial Discrimination, in my 8th year. It took all 8 years to do the work. But I never gave up with them. And the students and I were closer than ever. We just, when I left, I think I grieved for about 2 years. I cried because I missed my students so much. And that is learning from younger souls on, if you give them tools, if you give them what they need, just the time of day. Really, they will show up for you and they will change your life. And they changed my life.
It's amazing how much can happen or how much you can do for somebody if you just like sit there and listen to what they have to say. Or just ask them how they're doing, you know?
And mean it.
Yeah.
Like, how are you? People ask that all the time, but they don't lean in and listen.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And that's even the thing. So we had a friend of the show, brother Jamal Shabazz, on, and he talked about how we met randomly, and it was because we only met because he came up to me and was like, hey, I love what you're doing. And then he left. Like, that was it. That was the interaction. But I remembered that. And we talked about how it means a lot if you show up to an event for even 5 minutes and you don't even get an interaction with the person that was there, but even if they catch a glimpse that you were there, that leaves an impression. And in a city like Indianapolis, where we are still trying to figure out how we can cohere as different communities across different industries, across different demographics, whatever it might be, across creative mediums and expressions, like, that's something that I think we could do more of, is even just like the 5-minute interaction. Yes, I want authenticity and genuine curiosity behind you asking me how I'm doing. That would be great. And even the simple act of asking, even if it was just like, this is my Midwestern small talk because I don't know how to get out of a conversation, like, it still means something. I think, talk about showing up, I think that is one way, especially right now, especially in the age of like short attention spans. Even just like being willing to throw that out there just means something.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will definitely have to figure out how we can fill in more of this timeline that I want to get to, but I want to start now because you left teaching. You were there for 8 years. You taught for 8 years. Then you did a whole bunch of stuff. You had a bunch of stuff happen in your life, and then you had a whole bunch, and you just did like a bunch of things, which has kind of led you to where you are now, doing doing essentially what you were doing for those 8 years, which is
Yeah.
teaching people and connecting with people. But now you're doing it at way different levels for all different types of people. So I was wondering if you could just break down what it is that you're doing right now and like how that builds off of where you've come from.
You know, if I think that was one of the hardest parts about today was figuring out how to put all that in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Right. That's like so hard when you're very vocal like I am. So I'm going to try my best. Okay. I deeply believe that emotional intelligence, as an emotional intelligence expert, that's how I like to see myself, that I help people, leaders, teams, organizations step into their power, step into the ability to thrive and figure out who they are so that they can step into their zone of genius. It's really remarkable to know that people walk around in this world and have no idea the greatness they bring forward.
Yeah.
They really don't. And what is really great about what I do is I meet someone, and because that deep intuition has stayed with me, for those who know me for the last 30 plus years know that I read energy. I do everything around vibration and energy. And for people who don't believe in that, it's like, woohoo. They're like, okay, Sonal. But it has landed every single time to be important and to be like successful.
Yeah.
Right. So I say that because when I think about emotional intelligence and what I'm doing today, it really is about breaking down what people have to press pause for. So let me explain what that means to me, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I learned the coined phrase emotional intelligence when Daniel Goleman came out with the book. And he's remarkable, right? And I read the book and I was like, that's what they call it? That's what I've been doing my whole life. And I went, okay, I'll call it that too.
Sure.
And that seems to be a trend, right? In our society today. Oh, you call that inclusion? Well, then all right? I've been an inclusive human my entire life. There's nothing that I do where I don't invite everyone around me to join. That's just the way it is for me. I don't even think of it as a thing until people are like, you included me again? And I'm like, aren't we supposed to? Until I realize a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So with emotional intelligence, you have self-awareness as your first pillar. And in self-awareness, you're really taking the time to pause. What matters to me? Who am I? What are my values? And just as valuable, because we don't like to go there, is what am I not so good at?
Yeah.
And you know what? What are my triggers? Because when we pay attention to that, the second pillar really is around self-regulation and self-management. And I think that's the space, that's the action space so that a lot of people drop the ball on. Not intentionally, but they just don't think about it.
For
So
sure.
I know this is important to me and this is who I am and this is what I want. Excellent. What's your doingness around that? And if you know that someone approaches you, I'm going to make this up and say, where are you from? And that triggers you. The fact that you know it's a trigger, you're prepared in your self-regulation on how to show up in that space differently. That's the value. That's the pause. And then you're paying attention. The third pillar is empathy and social awareness. Who's around you? What matters to them? Because guess what? You're not living in a silo.
Yeah.
They matter. Lean in. And what I always tell my daughter, deeply listen. Don't just listen. Really read between the lines.
Sure.
Watch the body language. Listen to the tone, because that's going to shift everything that they're saying. And then the fourth pillar is relationship management. Now I can build those relationships with trust, with authenticity, with vulnerability, because I can't do that if I don't pay attention. And so to me, that's why when I learned about the phrase of emotional intelligence years ago, I was like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
That is who I am to the core. So that is what I'm going to go out, and people want a how. Like, but how do I do that?
Sure.
I've always coached. I've always been a teacher. Now I'm at that space where I'm like, let me tell you how. So after I got my Myers-Briggs and all these Dix certifications, all the things, right? I realized, okay, cool, that's self-awareness. We can all go, I'm ENTJ, I'm D, I'm I. And I run into these humans at organizations, and when I'm working with, the C-suite and stuff, and saying, that's great, but what do you do with that?
Sure.
What's next? And when they look at me like, I don't know what you mean, I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I've implemented and designed programs to teach people. That's the teaching part, again, that came full circle, right? Okay, I'm telling you, show up like A, B, and C, but I'm going to show you how. Here are the 3 ways to do it. And this is how you can do it, even as a hack.
Yeah.
And this is where I find my greatest passion, if you can't tell by how excited I get, because now I can teach people not just to survive. Again, this chokes me up, but to thrive.
Yeah.
And guess what? I went from survival and I'm in thriving. And when we thrive, Patrick, people listen and people want to be a part of that. That to me is leadership. That to me is when people lean in and say, I want some of that. Mm. So that's what I do for organizations and for humans. I coach. Really, it buckles down to who are you, what matters to you, and guess what? I'm going to help you get there.
I love it. So I'm here for it. You do that in a lot of different ways. Like you said, you do a lot of program designing. And one of the things that you shared in a conversation we had is of how you kind of just fall into a lot of the partnerships that you work with. It's just like you have a conversation and then it's like you get to the heart of what they're talking about or what their issue is. And generally it's like, well, this is how I might approach it. And they're like, well, would you want to work together? And it just kind of happens that way. I was wondering, so like that's where I think like the workbook and stuff comes from.
Yes.
And that's where the stretch process comes from.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
I was wondering if it was possible, because we don't have a full like 2 hours to dedicate to of the whole thing. If you could try and walk me through a very simplified version of the stretch process for me in like 5 minutes. Could you walk me through it and do it for me in 5 minutes?
Sure, absolutely. So stretch is about setting your goals and objectives. From what I've learned about you, which you're phenomenal, you want to change the world and you want to do it starting in your backyard. Mm. And I love that about you. So the S is self-awareness. Is the chapter S is, this is what I want to do. This is how, and you would go through the process of coming to that stretch goal. Mm-hmm. And then in T is for tone and attitude. Okay. You already are applying that. You're saying to yourself, my tone and attitude is, yes, I'm going to do this. And you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find people who want to do this with me. And I'm going to build partnerships and I'm going to have conversations. That's why I love the name of this podcast. And I'm going to, from those conversations, I'm not going to put a goal. This is what's going to come out of it. I'm going to let that come to fruition on its own. That's your tone and attitude. And it's not, oh, I got to do this podcast and oh my God, I got to find a guest this week. And that's the tone. When we shift our attitude and tone, we shift how we follow through with our goal. Sure. And then we go to R, reflect on what's needed. What do you need, Patrick, to make that goal happen? Well, you need resources. Resources is not just financial. Right. Those are nice, but they're also conversations with your wife. Where's my son going to go hang out when I go do this podcast with someone today? Yeah. Let me talk to my family. Are they okay with me sharing my story? Let me ask the people who are coming, what are you okay with? And this is what I'm learning about you in the reflect on what's needed. Let me do my research. And you do some really amazing research.
I try.
Right?
Thank you.
And so I don't like the word try because it means it's not that you're stepping into it. You're committed, whatever it takes, right? Because that shows pushing through. Try is just like, I'll take a step back, right? I know I'm a coach. I'll try to...
Tone and attitude.
I'll try to not coach ninja you here.
All good. So I asked for it.
Then we have E. Chapter E is how do you engage in new ideas? A lot of times when we stay and talk to the people who think like us and talk like us, we don't grow. And stretching is all about stepping out of your comfort zone. So you're showing engaging in new ideas by bringing in people with different points of view, different perspectives, different cultures, different countries, same cultures, same countries. Yeah. Let me bring it all in. That's your engaging in new ideas. You're not looking at it like, I think of the world this way, so everyone on my show has to think that way. Right? Because know there's going to be no growth from that.
100%.
Right? And your T is take action. Now, take action is the hardest and the most important, but it's the one that a lot of people don't know what to do with. They're like, okay, now this is too hard. I'm quitting, right? Take action to me is small baby steps. So I always tell people, if you want a podcast like you did, and I don't know this because we haven't had this conversation yet, but when you set that goal, did you say, okay, we're going to have a podcast, the room is going to look like this, the cameras will look like this? Or did you say, my first next step is?
Right.
then I'm going to.
Yeah.
And once that I experience that, if it falls and fails, no worries. I'll do this instead.
Right.
If it doesn't, it works, cool, I'll do this next instead. That's the action. That's the take action chapter. And it teaches you how to stay in the moment and be iterative, because that's when the magic happens. Because what if in one of those steps, something comes up and you had no idea would come up, but it was perfect for what you thought you wanted and you didn't know of it. You're missing out on that if you jump straight to, oh, it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right? So your take action is brilliant because you're like, I'm just going to do it. And whatever it looks and sounds like is what it looks and sounds like. And if I need to fix things, if the lighting is not the way I want it, cool. Next time I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then your C is change management. What is working for you? What's not working for you? Who did I bring on? Did these conversations help? Did this research work out for me? Did this mic work out for me? Did the people supporting me work out for me? That's in your change management chapter. And you know what? Maybe it didn't, but I love failing forward. Bring it on.
Sure.
And then the H is you're harnessing the power. You are celebrating every win. Look, you just shared with me something about your son not feeling well, and now he is, and he's working on getting better. That's sharing that win with you. Because if he wasn't, I'm going to ask you authentically, could you sit here right now focused on thriving versus thinking about, I have a son who's not feeling well and he needs me right now?
It'd be hard to not devote at least 1% to thinking about him.
Right?
So,
but we all do.
For sure.
And so when we focus on harnessing the power, we get to, not have to, say, no, I'm not feeling 100% today, and that's okay. But with what I do come to the table with, here's what I can do for you.
Yeah.
When people show up authentically like that and celebrate every small win, they create big wins. So that's the stretch process. That's the workbook. I have an online course for it. I have a stretch band for it that a lot of people in the city now probably have, and even around the country. But it's my own process that I designed, and I truly implement that into all of my trainings, and I infuse emotional intelligence with that as tools in your fancy fanny pack tool belt that you get to carry around life.
I love it. I appreciate you doing that with me just now, because now I feel like I've got some good stuff to walk home with and start utilizing and implementing in my life. And all I had to do was just invite you on to the show to get through that. So I appreciate that, but I hope that people can tap into, like, even in just that truncated version, like what an extrapolated version of that would look like, especially when you're intentionally devoting like actual time to invest in it, and not just like, hey, can you give me 5 minutes and just work through my life real fast? I appreciate you walking through that exercise with me. As we get ready to wrap up here, I first want to say thank you for sharing everything that you shared so far.
Pleasure.
I know I've learned a couple new things, but what it has done so far is just reaffirmed one of the reasons that I really appreciate knowing you. And it is just this idea of not showing up, but showing up as authentically as you possibly can in each of these moments. It's something I take inspiration from, and I hope that people watching and tapping into this can take inspiration from as well.
So too.
We also have talked a lot about community and what it means, whether it be our insular community and family, whether it be our broader communities that we're a part of. And we have a recurring segment on the show called Give Them Their Flowers. Shout out to Madeline McKinney and Frida's Flowers for sponsoring this segment. But it's the segment where we ask our guests to shout out a person or persons or anyone that they feel that deserves their flowers right now. So, Sonal, I wanted to ask you, who do you think deserves their flowers at the moment?
I could only pick one?
You can pick multiple people if you'd like.
Oh, I was going to say, look, I'm a giver, so that's a hard thing to say. Well, I'm always going to give flowers to my family.
For sure.
You know, when I say my family, my parents, my siblings, and my husband and daughter, for allowing me to fulfill this dream and passion. My husband's an educator, and it's not easy on him to support us
For sure.
On his back. So I am grateful to that. But I also want to say that I want to give flowers to the community of women that I've built in this city. It was the experience of women in my journey that made me not trust.
Sure.
And so to turn that around was magical. And in this last several years, I have built such a phenomenal community of women in the city. And I call my personal board of directors. And so I have a magical 5 that sit in my life that I could show up for, that hold me accountable no matter what. I could tell them anything and they'll hold me accountable, right? And so I love that. And so a shout out, I'm just going to give a list of names here.
List them off.
To my strategic partner, Aisha Cargile, to Linky, Ugeh, to Sonia Coles, Erin, Erin, Sanford, Faith McKinney, and you know Faith's daughter-in-law very well.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know I'm forgetting someone. I have, just so many amazing humans in my life. And Tiffany Green, I didn't mean to forget you. But I say that because these women, I could tell them something and say, I really want to do this. Like, yeah, don't do that.
Sure.
You need people like that in your life.
Right.
Or I might say, I can't do that. You take that back.
Yeah.
We're going to show up for you. And look, at our generations, I'm caring for my elderly parents who are remarkable, and it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and it comes with anticipatory grief.
For sure.
And then I have a junior high. So I love having this community. So Indianapolis is a community to me. I always said I would leave. I'm not going to lie. But now I'm staying. And my husband's like, you want to stay? And I'm like, yes. Why? Because I have magical humans in this city.
Yeah.
That means more to me than anything.
I've only known you to be a connector and a community builder. I think you people gatherer, I think is what we...
People collector and
people
connector.
Collector, yeah. Yes, that's what you had said when we first met. And I'm like, yep, I see that in the work that you do. And you actually, I feel like must have been, your ears must have been burning because you have provided me ample perfect segues into my next questions.
Okay.
So I only have 2 more questions for you as we get ready to go because I want to make sure I give you your time back as well because you've given us so much today in this short hour. But you talked about, when you were building, when you got to the city, when you were trying to like establish yourself, you ran into barriers. And it was like in circles of women specifically, it was like, who are my people? Like trying to find people. And we talk about it on the show. You might be part of the same community, but just because you're part of the same community doesn't mean you're in community with them. But when you find those people, you can really start to thrive. For anybody out there, women specifically, slightly more generally, folks who just find themselves as part of historically marginalized communities, what advice do you give to, or would you like to share with them as a person trying to navigate a situation in similarly, who is like, I'm running into wall after wall. I feel like I can't find my people. You found them. You even just said, I was going to leave. Now I'm staying.
Yeah. I have 2 phrases that keep coming to my heart. Step into your power. And the way you do that is it's a 3-fold step process that I designed. It's know your value. Take the time to understand your value. If you need to get feedback from others, do that to learn that process. Be authentic. What does that mean for you? Figure that out. And embrace your confidence. Because when you do that and you put all 3 of those together, right in the center of that lies your power. And I truly encourage people to do that because I always believe in leading with curiosity.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have on my t-shirt is don't should have on yourself. It's so easy to go, I should have done this, I could have done that. And, there's so many what we call sonalisms, my friends call that. And what that is different things I've said that they're like, you need to capture that. I'm like, okay. So they call them sonalisms. And that's things like curious, not furious. Don't should have on yourself. Lead with curiosity, not curiosity. So that means ask clarifying questions. If you're not sure and you don't understand someone's point of view, ask questions.
Right.
If someone's asking you or not asking you and you want to clarify how you're showing up for them, share those and say, here are some questions you get to ask me so that I could teach you because we all get to teach others.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to say there are so many women and I continue to collect awesome women that we all struggle with imposter syndrome.
For sure.
And I want to say this to everyone. A lot of people meet me like, oh, you're so confident and put together. Well, thank you. But I struggle with imposter syndrome on a day-to-day. And guess what? I get back on track because I tap into my tools.
Right.
We don't have to be perfect. As women, I believe in collaboration, not competition.
For sure.
And when I source these women, I also wanted to add, because I didn't want them to think I left them out, Caroline and Tracy and Betty, these women are my coaches. They're my mentors. And they're more than that. They're my advocates. They say my name in rooms when I'm not in there. I say names of humans in rooms when they're not in there. Women, that's what we need to do for each other. Not compete, share.
Yeah.
There's so much. And I know I keep going on this, but attitude of abundance versus scarcity is what lets us grow and blossom. Like these beautiful, gorgeous flowers here, which are amazing. And so I encourage all of you out there who are in that space struggling, embrace that struggle, press pause, step into action after you take some notes, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, right? Say,
Sure.
pause. How did that work for me? Did that work or not? Okay, take notes and listen to yourself.
Yeah.
And use that to build your momentum and your evidence, because we all want data to prove things, right? That gets to be your data.
Right.
And then you start building those relationships. When I started doing that, Patrick, I can't stop hanging out with amazing women. I keep meeting them. I mean, so much that I probably reach out to 100 to 200 women a month. Like, it's just intuitive for me. I text. It's so easy for me to be inclusive. And when people see that and experience that, they want to be inclusive.
For sure.
It's contagious.
Yeah.
And so that's what I encourage women and humans to keep doing, especially young girls.
Yeah.
And find those women. And so I have that for my daughter. All the women I just named, they're all aunties to my daughter. And she gets to watch each of these women fall, fail, thrive, strive, all the things. And she gets to take mental notes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that you dropped a lot of sonalisms in there. And I think that there's a lot of great nuggets to take out. And I think one of the things, again, another thing, a concept we talk a lot about on the show is modeling, and how for a lot of people, we just never really had the models for whatever it is that we want to do. Another thing that I'm thinking about is just the idea of parenting in community. Yes, you're going to learn most directly from your direct parents, the people that are you live with and who are your everyday guardians. And there's something to be said for being able to grow up in a community of people that's not just your, like, quote unquote biological family or your extended family. Like, are we really out there learning from everybody that we could possibly be learning from? Or are we staying insular and isolated in our own silo? And when we do stay siloed, we don't ask clarifying questions. We lose the kind of natural curiosity that we were born with because we get comfortable in the answers that we already have and we don't really want to know. That knowing pushes us into situations of discomfort, which feels like they're out of our control. And sometimes they are. And there's also opportunity to step into your power because it's by confronting those moments of discomfort that we can start to grow.
And all simply by engaging in new ideas.
Exactly.
Right? And different people, different backgrounds. Yeah.
Sonal, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared. I'm glad that we were able to capture some of this, especially the 5-minute stretch, for people to see how it works with you and what they could potentially be getting if they were to work with you. So with that, I have one final question for you. What is the best way for people watching, listening right now to find you, follow you, support you? What do you need from the community going forward?
Oh, I want the community to want to continue to grow and thrive because that's what I want to offer them is how. And so you can follow me on Facebook. I have it on, it's True You, it's TRU. Second word is YOU with Sonal. And then on Instagram, it's my whole name. And I know that's a long name, Sonal Sheth Zawarhi. And you're going to have that, right?
Yep.
In the thing. Okay. That's you call it a handle? I'm trying to learn social media. Okay. And then on LinkedIn is where I'm very active.
Okay.
So also Sonal Sheth Zawarhi. I also would love from the community, if you're listening to this, I celebrate Wonder Woman Wednesdays, where I shout out different women in the country that are doing things behind the scenes that help elevate our world today, that are not always in the limelight. I want to celebrate you, and Stretch Sundays, which I will give you a different stretch to think about every Sunday to start your week and the momentum. So if you can follow me, send me ideas, bring me in, let me know how I could support you and your organizations. I am super excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, we will do that. We will have all of those things linked in the show notes, and we will direct people to the LinkedIn. LinkedIn's where it's at. John knows what's up. He's on LinkedIn now, got his first post up. So we will make sure to do that. Sonal, thank you so much for sharing, for being here, and for giving us your time. Excited to see what happens in the rest of 2025.
I am super excited. It's going to be an amazing, amazing year. Can I say one more thing?
For sure.
One phrase that I want everyone to think about. When people feel valued, they show up with intention, on purpose, and with productivity. So make sure you're showing people around you how you value them.
There you go. Value people, and you never know. It just might help your business.
Yeah, that's a symbolism.
And you can value this show by tuning in every Tuesday on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. That's when new episodes come out. Conversation Piece Pod for everything else, the archives for merch and for the open door. If you're interested in participating, you can go there and click on that. Again, we have a lot of really cool stuff happening this month or have happened this month. I don't remember when this episode is coming out, but it's coming out in May, and May has been incredible. And without further ado, that's been John Overton and Popular Rapture on the mics, Mike Lee and Mike Lee Productions on the camera. Shout out to Pattern and shout out to the Studs for the space. Shout out to Madeline McKinney and Frida's Flowers for the flowers. Shout out to Sonal Sheth Zawarhi for being an incredible guest. And shout out to me for hosting this show.
Yeah.
I've been Patrick Armstrong, and this has been Conversation Piece. We'll see y'all soon.